Hey there, I'm recording this at the start of a new week, and over the weekend I was playing with some of the newer tooling available out there, new to me, in terms of low touch or low ops, setting up databases or data models. The amount of tools available for rapid prototyping today is simply unbelievable. And I kind of wanted to show you how I do that, how I go into prototyping examples. As a developer advocate, I often am creating one-off tutorials. For sure, Hasura shines best when you have existing data and you bring that in and you get your instant real-time APIs. But there is something to be said for the power of rapid prototyping, and I just wanted to sort of click one together and see how that goes as sort of a warm-up, coming back from a little bit of vacation time, and we'll see how this goes. So let's hop right into it. I'm going to go ahead and create a new project that will be initializing while I show you some of the other tools that I had in mind today. I'm just going to call this Blazing Prototypes. And while that's initializing for us, I'm going to hop right over into the tool that I came across. Actually, a coworker showed this to me a little while ago, and it's actually kind of fantastic. So this is dbdiagram.io, and it's from the Holistics folk, as they say there at the bottom of the footer. What this does is it allows you to iterate quickly over data models. And if you're like me, you do enjoy the iteratability of text format and kind of that flat file sort of approach to data, but you want that visual feedback quickly. So what we're going to do here is you'll see how this kind of works. You've got these tables and all of their independent connections. You can also see what the relationships are. It's a really powerful tool on its own. It's great for visualizing what your schema looks like, and you can really iterate quickly over features. If we go ahead and just remove the majority of these here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new one that we'll call people, which will simply have their ID available, and we're going to go ahead and call this like a name, which will be a varchar field. Spell that correctly. Looks like I have deleted syntax. There we go. So that fast feedback there. So let's say we have people, and we have something like places, and then we have something kind of like things, and we're going to connect people to places. And we can just iterate quickly on these with their various syntax shortcuts they make available to us. So if we do something kind of like ref here, and we're going to call this a one to many, or we can even do, we'll do a many to one in this case. A lot of people go to one place, so we'll use the less than syntax, which is the many to one, and then we'll simply say places .id. And when we do that, it creates this connection for us when we don't have a syntax error, which we have to actually indicate what the field is here. So we're going to go ahead and call this integer, and you'll see that it creates that connection for us right away. So we've already started building out this diagram. We can also say that people have things, and we're going to go ahead and call this a user of the thing here, which will be an integer, and we'll give this a reference, and this will again be a many to one, and this is going to go to our people.id. And when we have that in place, which we again need to have the right syntax for that colon missing. All right, so when we have that in place, you'll see that we have a database schema generated. I have one already to work with. It's a bit more complex. What this one does here is it is a project assignment, work needed kind of platform where a user is able to upload, let's say, a broken plumbing system, and then a backend office would go ahead and say, let's go ahead and estimate what this would cost. We can assign a repair person, have a project manager, sort of like what you might expect for some kind of modern startup. structure. Again, not the most well thought out data model, so it's a bit contrived for the purposes of tutorials, but it's showing you a bit more of the functionality and features and some of the complexity available to this. That's neither here nor there on this example. With the syntax here that we have, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and export this syntax into something that I can import into a new project. So if I go ahead and hit export here, I'm going to say export to Postgres SQL, and this gives me the file that I need right here. Let's go ahead and open this statement up. And I've actually gone ahead and opened this inside of a little StackBlitz interface, which is an online IDE that shows us what SQL it created. Just a quick scan seems to look like it's mostly correct, so I will go ahead and copy this content, and I'm going to head back over into the Hasura project that we created, and I'm going to launch that console now. So we have our Hasura cloud. Again, this is a completely low op solution. All of that functionality is handled for us. If I go to my database, I'm going to init a new database with Heroku here. And so again, very low touch, adding a database to my hosted solution. I'm going to go ahead and hit public here, and we're going to simply run the SQL statement to generate my entire data model here inside of the Heroku database using Hasura. So if I scroll to the bottom of this window and I go ahead and hit run, we'll see that I get a quick error, and that is because the Postgres model that I'm working with, the Postgres database I'm working with, doesn't actually support the date time field. I'm going to head right back over to the StackBlitz editor here. Let's go ahead and switch all of these date times to timestamps. And we'll just switch all of those to timestamp. That should fix that problem. Let's go ahead back to the run SQL. We'll replace that, and we'll run that now. We'll see what happens. And we have our SQL statement executed. I'm going to go ahead and just clear that console so I don't accidentally run that again later. And if I go back to my public data set here, you'll see that I am not tracking the tables currently. I'll go ahead and track all of those. And what that's going to do is actually bootstrap this entire API for me with Hasura, looking at all of my existing databases. So already we're getting quite a bit of interesting content created here. We have our data models, we have the relations with very low touch involved at all. And what I'm going to go ahead and do now is actually move on to another tool to scaffold out some prototype data. In the case I want to use something like my user model here. So let's head back over to the StackBlitz editor to have a look at that. And you'll see that we have the ID serial, we have the created at, the updated at, both of those are, or all three of those will be default. And we have the full name and an email. So what I'm going to do is bootstrap a bunch of users here, and I'm going to copy this, and I'll show you why in just a moment. So heading over to Mockeroo, which is another tool that's out there that allows you to generate data very quickly for prototyping purposes. I'm going to go ahead and just show you what I mean here. So I can have these columns, and I can click on this type, and there's any number of data types available to play with. What I want to do specifically though is make this match my data model. Instead of having to do that by hand, I can actually come to the More tab here, and I will say import fields from a create table statement. If I do that, I'll go ahead and say import fields from SQL. And what it's done here is it's actually mapped all of those columns for me. What I don't want to do is just have the created at and updated at fields here, because those will receive default values when they're inserted, as well as my ID, which I'm going to go ahead and just leave at the moment because it's giving me a row number iterator anyways. And so with my full name here, I'm going to come down here and I'll actually search for the term full name, which gives me a first and last name option, and then email. It actually gives me an email option as well. So when I do that, what it will allow me to do is actually generate all this as dummy data, but I don't want this as a CSV. I want this as an SQL statement. And with that created, I'm going to go ahead and call this the same name as my table, which is public.users. If I remember correctly, let's check that one more time. That is user, singular. And I will go ahead and download that data. Let's load that up one more time once it's done here inside of StackBlitz, which is nice. We can just drag and drop this over here and it'll show us. We have our insert statements created. I'm going to go ahead and copy all of these, head back over to Hasura, and inside of the SQL statement, I'm going to go ahead and paste those in, hit run, and there I have already created random data for my user. So that's really a fantastic way to prototype data quickly. Let's go ahead and just prove that that data is loading from our API. We'll head over to Graphical Explorer here, and from here I'm going to go ahead and tell it to do my users. Let's just check the ID on that, and we'll get the email as well. And what do we get? 1,000 results returned from the government. I have no idea the validity on these emails. It is possible they are real, so don't ping those. But anyways, we have functioning database prototype data, so we're going to go ahead and leave that where it's at for the moment. So what we've done is, with very low touch involved, we have created a database, added that to Hasura. We get an instant API. We've modeled our data with really simple syntax, imported all that content, added dummy data. Let's do one last piece here to cap it off, to actually prototype how that might look on an application. To do that, I'm going to head over to another tool here called Retool. I'm going to go ahead and hit create new, just do a blank app in this case, and I just want to demonstrate how fast I can connect data and be visualizing this. So I'm just going to call this the employee list, or the employee app. That's fine with me for now. I'm going to go ahead and head into here. I have this table, drag the table over, and now what I need to do is go ahead and get my data from my system. So I'm going to go down to this resource. I'm going to choose a new resource. I have one from a previous tutorial with them. We're going to go ahead and hit GraphQL. We're going to call this the employee app. And we're going to switch back over to Hasura, get our API information from the top. And I will return over to Retool, paste in that URL, our headers. We're going to just pass in the Hasura ID at the moment, so x Hasura admin secret. Back over to Hasura to grab that. Heading over here, we've added our data. We'll go ahead and say create this resource. And now back over to our apps, we're going to head inside of that tool we created, the employee app, and we're going to edit this application choosing the API data we want. So we're going to go ahead and say the employee resource, and I'm going to just simply create the exact same that we had done before. So I want to choose the user, actually is what we called it, user, and then we'll get the ID and the name and the email. From there, we're able to go ahead and save and run that. Clicking back on this table, we're going to choose that data source to iterate from. So we're going to go ahead and grab the query one data, and we will tell it that we want to get the user information. And we have just iterated all of that data through our table. We have the email, we have the full name. We can go ahead and change those orders if we would like. I'm going to go ahead and hide that bottom footer for now. And just for fun, if we wanted to add something like an action to this table, we could do that. We could say something like a new button here. And that action maybe would do something like emailing the user that we've got listed there. But this is, again, in a different space. You have the ability to quickly iterate on this content, prototyping off of the data that you're getting. It's an incredible time to be a developer prototyping real-time applications, and I think that you're going to really enjoy testing out these tools. So that's it. That's the quick demo that I wanted to throw together and show just how fast it is to prototype with content today, building up the data model, adding a hosted database to a hosted API provider that controls API access and all of the stuff that Hasura does, as well as then iterating and putting that content onto an interface. It's an amazing time to be developing this kind of content. If you prototype applications or concepts, I encourage you to try those out, and we'll catch you in the next tutorial.